Well, it is time for the post-release on Robin, and after some extensive field testing, I am ready to present you with the results. Now, the format will be in the following manner. I will let the pre-release footage play in the background, pause on each section, and present the additional information and findings there. After we have gone through all the data covered in the pre-release, I will also go over the aspects that were not covered in the pre-release, mainly the Eidolons. As this will be quite a long one, I will give you a couple of seconds to get comfortable, grab a beverage, sharpen your pencils, and open your notebooks as this masterclass is hereby in session. Let us start the kit analysis. As the basic attack is nothing worth mentioning, apart from the pretty animation, I will go straight to her skill. Her basic is still as advertised. A pretty animation you will see pretty rarely, as you will be most of the time locked in the ultimate effect if you know what you are doing. Her skill is pretty much Ruan Mei's skill, without the break effect buff Ruan Mei provides, but with the same mechanic. After using her skill, Robin will grant every ally a damage bonus for a set number of turns. The duration will decrease every time her turn begins, like I said, the same as Ruan Mei. Why fix something that isn't broken? Well, in this case, both of them are broken, but you get the point. My description was also on point, as the duration is indeed the same as Ruan Mei's skill, and since we know the exact numbers, let's give this comparison a closer look. Ruan Mei will provide you with a 68% damage bonus from her skill and trace if you can get the required break effect on her, which is higher than the 50% Robin has. But Robin, on the flip side, will provide this amount without any stat requirements. So out of the gate, Robin's skill is more friendly to newer accounts who do not yet have the time to farm the best relics. We also know the energy she gets from the A6 trace every time she uses her skill is 5. And while it may not seem like much, considering the ridiculous amount of energy needed to use her ultimate, every single bit counts. So this is more than welcomed. Moving on to her talent, Robin seems to provide each ally with a crit damage buff, going by the buffs present on her allies during the showcase. And since it was not mentioned it was tied to her skill, I presume it will be tied to her talent. Also, apart from this, she will regenerate a small amount of energy after each attack made by your allies. So follow-up units are more desirable as they have more hits due to their follow-up attacks, so she will get her ultimate quicker. Well, the talent crit buff is quite substantial at 20%, and considering it is team-wide and has permanent uptime, it is quite a nice addition. Also, the energy gain was confirmed at 2, which, while it may seem low, you need to consider that it will trigger with each ally attack, so this thing can get out of hand pretty quickly combined with speedy follow-up units. Building atop both of these is her A4, which will additionally grant a 25% crit damage for follow-up attacks during her Concerto state, so this cements her as the premier follow-up team support, as not only will she provide a pretty insane 45% crit damage buff, but the follow-up allies will also enable her to maintain her ultimate uptime. So yeah, I was right on the money with this one. And speaking of her ultimate, we have to also address this one. Robin truly takes the stage this time and starts your own private concert, doubling down on her singer identity. I do mean a concert, considering she will sing the enemies to death for the entire duration of her ultimate and probably your brain as well after you heard it for the 100th time. But hey, I for one really like the song choice. But I digress again. After she starts singing, she will action advance your entire team by 100%. Yes, you heard that right. I didn't stutter. And she will also deal additional damage with each attack made by their allies during her ultimate. And as if that wasn't enough already, she will be immune to crowd control during this duration. The first thing to note about her ultimate is related to her 100% action advance and her AI. If you are mainly using her auto, you will see diminished returns from this effect, as her AI is currently set to cast her ultimate as soon as it comes up, which in most cases may not be the ideal scenario depending on your ally's position in the action bar. So if you want to truly take advantage of this effect, manual play is recommended with her, at least in harder content like the upper floors of MOC. Additional things to note. Her turn will begin again once the concerto takes action on the action bar. This concerto works in a similar fashion to Jing Yuan's Lighting Lord, but it has a higher action value of 90 compared to it. But even so, it still has a lower value compared to your units, and its duration will also reset if the turn ends before it can activate, so it will be a while before it ends. But this action value, combined with her skill duration being tied to her turn starting, has some additional nice effects. Maybe some of you have caught on to it already, but what this effectively means is that you can prolong the duration of her skill if you still have at least a turn on it before you use your ultimate by quite a good margin, especially since the concerto action value will reset when a new turn begins. The implications of this are quite substantial, as you can enter your ultimate on the first wave of pure fiction with the skill active and ride it all the way to the third wave, enjoying a nice concert in the background for the duration. You can also use this trick to time your ultimate entry around the half of the first wave in MOC, so that you can finish it before entering the boss wave with your ultimate effect in full swing. And since you can regenerate energy on Robin while her ultimate is in effect with this prolonged trick, you can pretty much maintain a near-permanent concert in this scenario, which will be amazing for your clearing potential but disastrous for your ears, as by the 100th audition of the song, you may grow weary of it. The final thing to note about her ultimate are the multipliers. The team-wide attack buff is very nice, and considering it scales out of Robin's attack, you will want to build as much as possible, especially considering the damage portion will also do while in Concerto, which has a casual 100% crit rate and 150% crit damage value, so you won't have to farm crit stats on her. Also, an important note here. This damage from her ultimate will trigger one time per ally attack, and every type of attack counts, so ultimate, skill, basic, and follow-up attacks will do. But it has no cap on it, so again, follow-up units will see more profit from this as they will be able to trigger the effect both on their normal attacks and on their follow-up attacks. And since the damage is based on Robin's own stats, and she has the fixed crit stat, every ally will receive a big pseudo increase in damage with each attack, so don't be surprised if you see a 50k damage basic from your sustain units while her ultimate is active. And I mean pseudo because most of this number will be Robin's damage, not the allies. This also confirms my statement that she is the hardest hitting support we have at the moment. Well, unless you count Ruan Mei vaporizing an enemy with her technique in Simulated Universe. Her technique will provide her with a small amount of energy again at the start of each wave. Nothing fancy, but considering her ultimate goal is the bread and butter of her kit, it is a nice quality of life. The energy gain from her technique has also been confirmed to be 5 at the start of each wave, which is again nothing much on paper, but it may very well be the amount needed to guarantee permanent uptime on your ultimate, so make sure to cast it before each battle. Also, since it applies to each wave, it will see greater potential in pure fiction as there is one additional wave compared to the MOC chambers. To summarize her kit, she seems to be the go-to support for follow-up archetypes and most likely an amazing support for both MOC and pure fiction, due to her universal buffs and her personal damage during her ultimate. Aside from the follow-up teams, she can be slotted easily within most other teams, as the damage bonus from her skill can be appreciated by DOT teams, while the critical damage, if she does have one on her talent, will work fine with the traditional hyper-carry teams. The only archetype where she will not see much use is a team focused on debuffs, as, sadly, she provides nothing in this sense. But she does seem to have the biggest personal damage out of the Harmony units. Who knew an angelic singer would hit harder than a lady with a rifle or a roundhouse kick from a masked fool? The kit analysis was also spot on. She has indeed found her best playfield in pure fiction, but that is not to say that she will not shine in MOC or Simulated Universe either. I would say she is a universally usable support with a cherry on top in pure fiction. Her team archetype suggestions are also as described in the pre-release. Nothing new has come up so far. For Relics, Musketeer will probably be her best set. Messenger is also a good alternative, considering the additional speed it provides. Okay, here I want to expand a bit, as while the Musketeer as a 4-piece is still a great option, especially since most of you probably have a lot of pieces laying in the inventory from farming the weekly bosses, the best relic set in terms of her own personal damage during the ultimate state is 4-piece boxing, as the damage done by her in the ultimate is counted as physical damage, and you want as much attack as possible, so the boxing set will provide the most amount of stats needed to charge her damage. But note that you might see lower damage numbers until it's fully stacked on your first ultimate window if you didn't get lucky enough to get hit a couple of times before you cast it. Apart from these two, the combination of 2-piece Musketeer and a 2-piece Prisoner will be a great option for the 24% attack you get from it. If you were unlucky with the speed substats, you may also want to try 2 pieces Musketeer and 2 pieces Hacker Space, or in case you have some amazing good attack substats. 2-piece Musketeer and 2-piece Boxing are also a great option. For Planar sets, Fleet, SSS, or Keel will be interchangeable depending on the team composition, but SSS would be the preferred choice if you want to maximize her own damage during the ultimate. This is also true, but apart from these, you can also run either Von Whack or Panakini depending on the team composition, especially if you are not running that many follow-up units, in order to capitalize on the energy gain from them to make up for the loss of energy from the talent. Quickly as well, in terms of stats, you want as much attack as possible, so go for an attack percent body and attack percent boots if you were lucky to get enough speed from your substats to reach at least 120 speed on her. Otherwise, use speed boots. For the orb again, run the attack percent orb, or alternatively, you can opt in for a physical damage if you have one with better stats or lack an attack orb, and for the rope, recharge all the way. As for the stat threshold, as said, aim for 120 speed at least. You don't really want more, as she will get a 25% advance forward at the start of the fight from her A2 in order to get in front of your DPS and cast her skill. For attack, aim for as much as possible, with around 4,000 being a good benchmark. And for HP and defense, try for around 3k HP and 600 to 800 defense, so she is not squishy either. For light cones, as you want as much energy regen in order to keep the uptime on the ultimate, Bronya's signature will be a great option, but of course her signature will most likely be her best in slot. For 4-star options, Planetary will be decent when paired with a physical DPS. Past and Future, or the Battle Pass Light Cone, are also decent. The newly introduced 4-star Harmony Light Cone might also be a great option, depending on the effect. While these are also true, let me just say this. Robin is one of those units who truly wants her Light Cone, as it's sadly the only one that has everything she wants: attack, energy, and team buffs. Don't get me wrong, you can use other options, but trust me, you will notice the difference between using her signature and not using her signature. But the free 4-star Journey Light Cone has been confirmed to be a good enough stand-in for her signature for most players, although since it lacks the energy regen she wants, if you are not using a follow-up focused team, you will see a lower uptime on her ultimate. If you want more ultimate uptime, grab Bronya's signature from the shop, or you could use the good old meshing cogs and pray to get hit. They really should start adding some more general light cones to the shops, as this specialized light cone is getting out of hand really fast. Like I have touched on previously, all the follow-up units will be preferred to be paired with her, but she can play nice with every unit released so far to some extent. So let me also expand on this. Yes, any follow-up unit will be part of her fan club, but since she wants units with more follow-up attacks, there is also a ranking among the follow-up units, which is as follows. Topaz, Dr. Ratio, and Aventurine, as well as Clara, will be preferred over Blade, Herta, Himeko, and Jing Yuan, which are slower in their follow-up triggers. Clara also has a footnote added to it that is scenario-dependent, as she will deal more follow-ups in AoE scenarios compared to single-target ones, so match her accordingly. The best follow-up team you can currently use will be Aventurine, Topaz, Dr. Ratio, and Robin, as this one will have an insane amount of follow-up triggers for both Aventurine and Robin to capitalize on, as well as a great synergy between Topaz and Dr. Ratio, especially if you also invested in Topaz a bit more to stack up Ratio's needed debuff quota. Ratio can be substituted for Clara in AoE scenarios, as she will shine better there. For a more 4-star heavy option, you can run Ratio, Pella, or Ting Yun, any sustainer, although Gallagher will be preferred for the added debuffs and Robin. And like I said, if you want to use her with dot teams, you can certainly do so, as she can easily be slotted in every Ruan Mei dot team we have so far, with the best option being any sustain, although Huo Huo is the best option, along with Kafka, Black Swan, and Robin. For more 4-star options again, Gallagher comes in as a good option. For the sustain, Lynx can be used as well. Pella, or a secondary 4-star DPS, can fill in for Black Swan and Robin. Finally, for hypercarry teams, look towards something like Fu Xuan or Aventurine for sustain, Jinglu and Blade for DPS, and Robin. You could also swap the Blade slot for another support unit like Asta or Ting Yun. One important note for all of these teams is to place Robin near the sustain unit in order to get hit more often and get more energy for her. Let's also touch on the Eidolons since they are pretty good, and we didn't cover them in the pre-release. Robin's E1 will grant the whole team 24% all-res penetration during her ultimate, similar to the amount Ruan Mei's ultimate grants. And since everyone knows how insane and valuable this type of buff is from Ruan Mei, it's safe to say that this Eidolon is a great choice for those looking to invest in her more, as it will boost her buffing capabilities even further as well as her own damage. Robin's E2 will further boost her support capabilities by providing the allies with a 16% speed buff during Concerto, which will allow you to squeeze in more hits within its duration, as well as potentially enabling any speed threshold effects from gear, such as Glamoth. More crucially, it also enhances the talent's energy regeneration from 2 to 3, which will further ease the energy constraints she has. While it may not be as versatile as a buff compared to her E1, for the improvements it brings to her own issues as well as the added speed buff, it also qualifies as a good pickup. Robin's E4 continues the trend to make her even more insane, as now it will instantly remove all crowd control debuffs on allies when they get action advanced by the ultimate, turning her into a cleanser as well, a role usually reserved for the sustainer units, and it will also improve the allies' effect resistance by 50% during her ultimate as an added middle finger to the enemy, especially if you combine this with Aventurine's talent. You are looking to be, for all intents and purposes, CC immune. So yeah, pretty nuts, if you ask me if we have already reached this point in the game where we can unlock the option to completely negate game mechanics. And finally, E6 makes Robin teach a valuable vocabulary lesson and answers the question, why is there the word harm in harmony? By getting 8 uses of damage instance during her ultimate, which will have a small amount of 600% crit damage bonus instead of the normal 150%. This damage increase will go back to the usual amount after the 8 attacks have been launched, and the stack count will reset when you use your ultimate, so if you chain ultimates back to back, you can enjoy the big numbers again. I really don't get this trend of turning either the sustain units or the support units into absolute damage monsters. If things go this way, I can see that around the end of Year 2, we may have a team capable of killing the enemy before even getting a chance to load into the battle. Something like Acheron's technique, but for MOC and pure fiction as well. The enemy will just see you running at him, and he will start loading the victory screen, as it knows it will be pointless. Anyway, rant aside, if you want to sing the enemy to their final sleep, this one is the Eidolon for you. Well, this marks the end of this post-release analysis, and the end of the most extensive review I have done for a character so far, taking both videos into consideration. I would greatly appreciate it if you let me know if you liked this format by either leaving a comment or liking the video. It's the best way I can get feedback from you in order to know if my videos are well received. Now, I will take a small break to recover from all of this, and I will see you in the next one. But until then, I am Professor Veritas Ratio, and remember, stay smart and sexy.